Good morning. Welcome to UUCC, the UU Church of Canandaigua. I'm Eileen, your minister. Happy Solstice Eve. This morning, we celebrate Yule together. I've got a roaring fire behind me, although I will confess that's all kindling burning and it may not roar this whole time. I'll do my best. I've got a warm mug of peppermint tea, and I hope that you all are making yourselves cozy as we get ready for the longest night ahead of us. Do what you can to make yourself comfortable and cozy. Pull a blanket up, crawl back into bed. It's Zoom church. We can do that. Before we begin our service this morning, I have just one quick announcement to share with you. And that is that our UUCC gifts and gear sale is ongoing, and I'm going to put an order in today so that we can hopefully receive some items by the end of the week. So if you have anything last minute that you'd like to order, some t-shirts, water bottles, tote bags, I encourage you to follow the link in the chat and place an order this morning, because this afternoon that order is going to go out so that we can receive those items by the end of the week, as long as the Postal Service is able to truck through with them. And now let's all take a deep breath in and let us enter a space of worship. Let's light our chalices together. If you have a chalice, would you light it with me as we say our chalice lighting words? We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. And as we begin this morning, I want to tell you about my toddler, Ewan. He is a great maker of mischief, and I have evidence of this to share with you today. Ewan loves nothing more than climbing up to high places he shouldn't be, climbing into places where he doesn't belong, putting things in his mouth that don't belong there. The evidence goes on and on. He loves to eat things that aren't food, to give his actual food to the dog or just rub it into the dog's fur. He loves to bang on the keys of a laptop when someone's work email is open. He likes to get stuck places and get into all kinds of things where he really doesn't belong. And I think, I have to admit, he comes by it honestly, from a long line of family pranksters, from really the whole human history of childhood mischief. And as much as it infuriates me some days, I figure it's my job, really, to not train this impulse out of him, but to orient him toward a more holy mischief, toward troublemaking for the good. Risky play is good for our brains, and mischief is a great leveler of power. It is a way for the powerless, without causing much real harm, to chip away at the might of the powerful. Children make mischief because they are relatively powerless, and it is how they exert control over their small world. And I think sometimes this is why we come to church, to learn to be makers of holy mischief, to make the kind of good trouble that weakens the foundations of power and lifts up the oppressed. Let's make some good and holy mischief today. And first, as we begin, let's turn the wheel of our seasons. Would you please join with us in singing our first hymn, People Look East?
People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able. Trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today. Love, the guest is on the way. Furrows, be glad though earth is bare. One more seed is planted there. Give up your strength, the seed to nourish, that in course the flower may flourish. People look east and sing today. Love, the rose is on the way. Stars keep the watch when night is dim. One more light the bowl shall brim, shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. People look east and sing today. Love, the star is on the way.
And now it's time for a story. Our story this morning comes from this book by Carolyn McVicker Edwards called The Return of the Light. And this morning we hear a Norse story of the god Loki and the death of light. We ought to have some pictures, shouldn't we? The air was sweet in the upper world, home of the wind. The swamp wolf was caged. The eagle atop the world tree slumbered. The great serpent dozed at its roots. The watchman at the rainbow bridge relaxed in the midst of sounds of teasing laughter and waterfalls. Green vines entwined the great hall of the goddesses with the great hall of the gods. The rainbow bridge shimmered. The giants were far away. The gods, every one of them, were safe. Loki, that fire-haired pretzel of an athlete, neither god nor giant, somersaulted to cover up his envy. He landed on his feet, but his heart felt upside down. Balder again. Every single god and goddess loving that pretty Balder who was never anything but good, kind, fair. Every answer of Balder's was always just right, perfect. That's what Balder was, and adored for it. For this very moment, the gods encircled Balder, god of light, who stood head thrown back, radiant, arms outstretched. They were pelting him with every sort of object, each of which fell away from his body, harmless as a snowflake. On and on the gods played this strange game in self-satisfied, jubilant relief. See, just weeks before, Balder, the glorious one, had dreamed over and over that he would die. It's about time, Loki thought privately. But he said nothing. Balder's parents, Loki's brother, the great magician Odin, and Odin's wife Frigg, the fate knower, had gripped each other anxiously, then called all the gods together. What could be done to prevent the death of their beloved Balder, son of light, son of sun? He simply must not die, they shouted. He cannot, they roared. We will not let him. They devised a plan. Frigg would ask every single being in all 9 worlds, living and not living, to refrain from hurting her precious child. Loki had turned himself into a fly on the wall, and watched while Frigg, glowing with zeal, had cloaked herself for departure. Frigg asked water, air, fire, and metal, each in all their forms, not to hurt Balder. Beasts, birds, rocks, snakes, disease, each one assured her. She reported when she returned that they would never, ever bring harm to Balder, god of light. Now, giddily, smugly, the lot of them mocked fate, making of Balder a target. He couldn't be wounded. Peelings, stones, the golden knights and pawns of their great chess set, even arrows made no difference when they hurled them at Balder. His beatific participation irritated Loki all the more. And that is where we stop our story for now. Let us sing a second hymn. Has summer now come dawning?
Has summer come now dawning amongst the winter snows? And shall we nest the tiny birds within the pine tree boughs? And shall we nest the tiny birds within the pine tree boughs? Already now the candles have blossomed on the tree to light the longest winter night for all of us to see. To light the longest winter night for all of us to see. The old one now made youthful, just like a child at play. The bending back now straightened, so in our hearts we pray. The bending back now straightened, so in our hearts we pray. In all our hearts is kindled a hearth fire so sublime. Would that this Yuletide spirit be with us for all time. Would that this Yuletide spirit be with us for all time.
And now I invite you into the spiritual practice of generosity. The good work of our church is funded by the people of this community. And we share our funds each month with a service partner who is also part of our community. This month's service partner is the Rochester Mutual Aid Network. And you have a couple options in terms of how you might choose to give today. I've posted a few in the chat. There is a link where you can give online to this morning's offering. It's canandaiguauu.org/connection/donate. You could go there now to give to this morning's offering, or you could choose to mail a check to UUCC at 3024 Cooley Road in Canandaigua. And however you give, we thank you for your generosity. If you make a note in either case that your gift is meant for this morning's offering, we will make sure that we share a quarter of it with our service partner this month. And now let's return to our story. Loki changed his shape. He became an old woman. He knew Frigg would mistrust him if he went to her in his own form. Frigg was spinning when the old woman hobbled up to her. "Your Balder is in peril," wavered the crone. Frigg looked up, frightened. "They're throwing things at him," croaked Loki as the old woman. "Oh, of course," smiled Frigg, relieved. "They're playing a game with him, but he can't be hurt. I've asked every being in the 9 worlds not to hurt him." "Really?" the crone marveled. "You talked to every single one?" A flicker of annoyance passed over Frigg's face. "Well, yes," she said, "everyone who counts. I didn't bother with mistletoe. It's so small and weak, it couldn't possibly make a difference." The old woman clucked and moved away slowly. Out of sight of the goddess, Loki leapt out of the old woman's shape and into his own. Snip, snap, he reached an oak and plucked the mistletoe there down, crooning a little song of triumph. "Too small and weak, are you, little friend? We'll see about that." Loki carved a point on the mistletoe's thickest twig. It was soft, but Loki knew it wouldn't matter. Strange pale weapon in his hand, he slunk back to the deity's great silly game. He found blind Hod, the god of night, wistful as usual, standing in the sidelines. "Why don't you play?" asked Loki, putting his hand on Hod's shoulder. "I've nothing to throw, and I can't even see him." Loki gave an encouraging snort. "Ah, you can do it. Let me help." Into Hod's hand, he placed the dart. Then, using his own body as a lever, he guided Hod's shot. The mistletoe whistled through the air and landed its point directly into Balder's heart. The beautiful god sank instantly to his knees and then fell face down upon the ground. The boisterous merrymaking fell deathly silent. Stunned, the gods and goddesses could not move at first. Then Nanna, Balder's wife, screamed, "My husband!" Loki watched them, his heart gloating, but his mind unquiet. And we will pause the story there. I now invite you into a time of centering, followed by some shared silence. Get comfortable in your seat. Take a deep breath in. Maybe let some part of you find the floor or feel supported. Let your shoulders fall. And if you like, let your eyes close, but this morning's meditation comes with some pictures, so you might choose to keep them open. This morning's meditation is called The Shortest Day by Susan Cooper. So the shortest day came, and the year died. And everywhere down the centuries of the snow-white world came people singing, dancing, to drive the dark away. They lighted candles in the winter trees. They hung their homes with evergreen. They burned beseeching fires all night long to keep the year alive. And when the New Year's sunshine blazed awake, they shouted, reveling. Through all the frosty ages, you can hear them echoing behind us. Listen. All the long echoes sing the same delight, this shortest day, as promise wakens in the sleeping land. They carol, feast, give thanks, and dearly love their friends and hope for peace. And so do we here now, this year and every year. Welcome, Yule.
Dark of winter, soft and still, your quiet calm surrounds me. Let my thoughts go where they will, ease my mind profoundly, and then my soul will sing a song, a blessed song of love eternal. Gentle darkness, soft and still, bring your quiet to me. Darkness soothes my weary eyes, that I may see more clearly. When my heart with sorrow cries, comfort and caress me, and then my soul may hear a voice, a still small voice of love eternal. Darkness, when my fears arise, let your peace flow through me.
Let's hear the end of our story. There was nothing to be done. Balder, the sun, the god of light, was dead. Hell in the world of mists and the dead would be keeping a place for him. When they placed his still form on the planks of his funeral boat, his wife Nanna's heart burst within her. Then they had to lay her beside him. The orange of the funeral pyre lit the ocean with an angry, mournful light. Who will win my undying love? Whispered Frigg. Who will bring my son and his wife back from hell's underworld? On Odin's eight-legged stallion, Hermod the Bold galloped into hell's underworld. A giantess stopped him. What are you doing here? She asked. Your skin has too much color for death. Have Nanna and Balder passed this way? Asked Hermod. I've come for them. Yes, it's 3 days now. They are in Hell's Hall. The ghosts of Balder and Nanna smiled wanly at Hermod. They gave him gifts for Frigg and Odin. Hermod begged Hel to let them return. The whole world mourns, said Hermod. Nothing grows, there's neither warmth nor light. The hearts of humans and gods are dim with tears. Interest reddened in Hel's shadowed sockets. Are their eyes, too, dim with tears? Hermod assured her that it was so. Then so be it, said Hel, her great teeth showing. If everyone and everything on earth will weep for these two, they may return. The ghosts of Balder and Nanna stirred, hopefully. But even if one does not shed tears, then they stay. Hermod raced back with the wonderful news. Everyone and everything wept. The mistletoe especially cried for its terrible part in the death of Balder. Ever after, mistletoe carries the pearl-like berries as its tears. Everyone but Loki. I do not weep, sulked Loki. He never wept for me, and I do not weep for him. And so it was that Loki's dry eyes kept Balder in the world of the dead. The gods and goddesses enraged caught Loki. The gods chained Loki to a rock. They hung a venomous snake above him to drip venom on his face. The earth trembled and shook, and then, with Loki's agony, he cried. Balder did return, but not until Loki had broken free of his fetters and loosed the swamp wolf from his prison. The great serpent at the bottom of the world tree uncoiled. The watchman at the rainbow bridge blasted his trumpet when he saw them coming. The eagle atop the world tree awoke and screamed in terror. The swamp wolf swallowed Odin. The great serpent writhed and spit flames that engulfed the 9 worlds in a last burst of power. The sun gave birth to a daughter even more beautiful than she. Then finally, onto the ashes came Balder, god of light, free from the underworld, clinging tenderly to the arm of his wife. And then the only 2 humans left in the middle world, who had hidden themselves away, came out into this new light. The gods and goddesses then, the ones who were left, gathered together on the sunlit plain of the upper world, home of the wind. The gods and goddesses sifted through the wreckage of their great hall, and in the ruins they found the golden chess pieces with which they had once amused themselves. Slowly, slowly, they began to play again. And this is the end of our story. So my 4-year-old, Rory, has had some fears about the dark lately. He makes sure the hallway light is on at bedtime, and he doesn't like to be left alone if it's dark. So we've been talking to him about all the lovely and good things about darkness, hoping that someday the fear will pass. Darkness is needed for good rest, I say. It tells our bodies to make sleeping hormones instead of waking up ones. It's good for creating, because without all that information from our eyes, our brains can imagine so much. Though I'll admit this creativity is the very source of many of our darkness fears. And I say darkness is good for sneaking, for the spirit of mischief and trickery. And like Loki shows, as do so many of the trickster incarnations of the divine, we've been told stories about for all of human time. Some holy mischief is a good thing for us. We're used to a culture of Yuletide, where all the frenzy and energy is around consumption, buying things, and where the ritual, the sacredness, is meant to be all calm and bright, tender and mild, if you will. But Christmas and Yule before it, which we celebrate today, has a much more raucous and mischievous origin. It wasn't until the 19th century that Yuletide shifted to be the solemn and dignified observance we all know now, with candlelit churches and quiet home celebrations. It wasn't until nearly the 20th century that those home celebrations became so commodified. Earlier versions of Northern European Yule celebrations included a rowdy tradition of poor folks, peasants or serfs, demanding material justice from the rich, usually with some alcohol and musical courage thrown into the mix. Ordinary people would go wassailing during Yule, drinking a spiced wine or ale called wassail from a common bowl, singing songs, and knocking at the doors of nearby landed gentry, usually their landlords. They demand gifts and offer song and drink as a parting blessing in exchange. A refusal was met with a fair bit of mischief. You may notice remnants of this practice in the carol "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," where singers demand figgy pudding and promise not to leave until they get some. The origins of that practice may come from an earlier form of wassailing, where folks would bring a drinking bowl of something special to the cider orchards at Yule to beseech the trees to wake up and start working on the gift of a good harvest that year. Songs and blessings were offered in return. However different this practice looks from our modern Yuletide, whose doors now should we be knocking at to demand some fairness? And what would happen if, instead of spending, we asked for what we need? What if, instead of all things calm and bright, we embraced just a hint of darkness, just a little of the power of holy mischief? Right here at home in the Finger Lakes, in recent years, ordinary people with very little power stood in front of the gates shielding Crestwood Energy Company's property on Seneca Lake, where the corporation planned to store pressurized natural gas in crumbling old salt mines beneath the drinking water source for about 100,000 people. There were hundreds of arrests, sometimes the same people over and over for misdemeanor trespassing. Hundreds of mischievous mosquitoes, these people were, on the back of a giant. And in 2018, the state rejected the corporation's Finger Lakes storage plan. So this year, on the longest night, I ask us to think about what sort of good trouble, as John Lewis called it, we might get up to. How could we affect the world with some good trouble, some holy mischief? We might not topple an oppressive empire on this one longest night, but we can chip away at the edifice of power. We can tell ourselves and our neighbors that the order and control of oppressors is not divine order, that the rules of power are not ours to follow. Unjust laws cannot bind us. Mischief is the power that small and ordinary creatures hold over society's towering framework of wealth and authority. It is the power of David over Goliath, of a little bit of rust over a huge bridge spanning a giant river, of a trickster god over the very sun in the sky. It is practical hope, the hope that we get to hold on to even when we feel powerless. On this longest night, for the sake of justice, of liberation, let's make some mischief, friends. May it be so.
Wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our drink it is brown, and a bowl it is made of the white maple tree. With a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. Oh, here's to Dobbin and to his right. I pray God send our master a good Christmas pie, and a good Christmas pie that may we all see. With a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our drink it is brown, and a bowl it is made of the white maple tree. With a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. Oh, here is to Phil Pale and to her left ear. Pray God send our master a happy new year, and a happy new year that may we all see. When a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our drink it is brown, and a bowl it is made of the white maple tree. With a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. Come butler, come fill us a bowl of the best, and you'll hope that your soul in heaven may rest. But if you do draw us a bowl of the small, then down will go butler, bowl and all. Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our drink it is brown, and a bowl it is made of the white maple tree. With a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. And here's to the maid in the lily white smock, who tripped to the door and she slipped back the lock. She tripped to the door and pulled back the pin, but I let all these jolly wassailers in. Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our drink it is brown, and a bowl it is made of the white maple tree. With a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee.
Thank you, Bill. I have to say, an Amazon truck drove by as you played that amazing song, and I almost felt the courage, like I could knock on Jeff Bezos' door and demand some figgy pudding or what have you. Our blessing for the fire this longest night is from John Lewis. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. Amen. Let's sing together our closing hymn, Deck the Halls.
Don we now our gay apparel, la 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 the harp and join the chorus. La 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 la. Follow me in merry measure. La 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 la. While I tell of Yuletide treasure. La 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 la. Fast away the old year passes. La 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 la. Hail the new ye lads and lasses. La 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 la. Sing we joyous all together. La 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 la. Heedless of the wind and weather. La 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 la.
Let's extinguish our chalices together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.